welcome you to the Leon County Board of County Commissioners meeting set for today's date, make that June 14th, 2022. As we begin our meeting today, we ask that our invocationist would come forward at this time and to have the appropriate commissioner to introduce this person. It may be me. All right, I want to welcome Reverend Candace McKibben, the Director of Faith Outreach at Big Bend Hospice, to do our Pledge of Allegiance, and that was supposed to have been Commissioner Brian Welch. Commissioner Welch, in his absence, I've done so. Thank you, Ms. McKibben.
Commissioner Proctor, I'm on the phone if that's okay.
Oh, thank you. I defer to you. Is there a word you'd like to add to that, Commissioner Welch?
I would. Thank you, Mr.
Good.
Chair. I apologize for my absence, and we may have to have a motion to allow me to participate telephonically, but I have got COVID-19 again. Excuse me. So do we need to make that motion before I speak, or can I go ahead?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Very good. It's been moved. Second, and all in favor, please say aye. Passage unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to take the opportunity to introduce Reverend Candace McKibben, who is no longer with Big Bend Hospice. I have learned she is retired from that now. It's with Tallahassee Fellowship. Reverend McKibben is a very important person to me because she performed my marriage ceremony almost 19 years ago to my wife, Kim. And I'm proud to have her before us today, and I regretfully am not there to say hello to her, but thank you, Reverend McKibben, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, Reverend McKibben, we welcome you to do our prayer. Shall we stand?
In whatever way you pray or garner strength for your soul, would you join me? Holy One, this Flag Day, as we remember our nation's history and values and those who made our republic possible, we pause in gratitude. May we be ever vigilant in upholding our core values, that one day there may be liberty and justice for all. As we've gathered in this place to tend to important matters of recognition and business impacting our county, give us all focused hearts and minds. May our commissioners who serve us have great wisdom and discernment as they consider the items on their agenda and the concerns of the citizenry they represent. May the citizens of our county have clarity of thought and purity of interest to present matters to them that will impact the welfare of all. May liberty and justice be at the heart of all that happens in this chamber. By your divine Spirit, grant that all might listen well and hear each other with passion for the well-being of all. May unity over division bind us in the important work we do together this day. Keep us grateful for each other as you grant us all a renewed vision of who we can be at our best. In the powerful name of love, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we sit, members of the Chamber, County Commissioners, we have assembled today, and since our last assembly, we've lost one of our colleagues in the person of Commissioner Jimbo Jackson, whose loss has been felt across his district, District 2. His loss has been felt by family members, and indeed his loss to the Leon County School District is significant. I would ask if we would pause for a moment of silence before we proceed in reflection and memory of Commissioner Jackson. Amen. Okay, you may be seated. Commissioners, as we come now to our business, we favored this afternoon with the presence of our Chief Judge of the Second Judicial Circuit, Judge Jonathan Shorstrom, who stands before us now. And Judge, what might your purpose be before us today?
Thank you so much, Chair. It's such a privilege to be before you. I'm here for a recognition. When I learned about the in memoriam for Commissioner Jackson today, I wondered if it was appropriate even to do this. I think back, I had the great joy, the great privilege of administering the oath of office to Commissioner Jackson when he won his first term, and it's a difficult circumstance for me to be in. Of course, nothing compared to what his family's been in. But I thought, and the recognition itself is to recognize the work of this commission and its staff in meeting the challenge and assisting the courts in meeting the court's challenges from the pandemic. And it seemed to me appropriate for us to carry on is what we do if we serve. If we serve, though our hearts break, we carry on. And so I wanted today to come before you with a recognition of you and your staff. This is not a recognition of succeeding in our response to the pandemic. This is a recognition for carrying on in unprecedented times and meeting the challenges as best we could. The absence in that chair is a demonstration of our own limits, a reminder of our own humility. That being said, I did not want to miss this chance to thank you for the support that you gave to us. The courts are now fully open for business, have remained open for business. We've now tried close to 200 jury trials since we reopened. We've had close to 8,000 jurors through this building who came in knowing full well that we couldn't guarantee their safety, but they came in because they recognized, as we do, the importance of our mission to the courts, the importance of equal justice under law, the importance of holding our government accountable. We've resolved something like 31,000 cases since the pandemic changed everything we do about our operations. We have had the unqualified support of this commission, unreserved support of this commission. And I want to recognize two people specifically today who really were your agents for that effort and who deserve that recognition today. But it's you and your entire staff. Tens of millions of dollars in direct assistance to residents and businesses and nonprofits. You led the efforts to vaccinate our most vulnerable population. You ensured our healthcare capacity. And you provided the court system, especially with the support that was necessary for us to ensure that the citizens of this county could resolve their disputes in the court system. Vince Long and Alan Rosenzweig were your agents to develop and execute policies, and we would have been lost without their help. Funding, policy, communication, leadership, they delivered on behalf of this community, on behalf of this commission, on behalf of the community, on behalf of the citizens of Leon County, and we wish to recognize them for their leadership and their staff for the absolutely essential assistance in getting us to this point in the pandemic. So, Mr. Long, Mr. Rosenzweig, would you come forward? And I wanted, by the way, introduce to you, this is Elizabeth Garber. You'll note that Grant Sladen is sitting back there. Y'all are used to working with Grant. It's honest to goodness really going to happen. On July 1, Grant Sladen will be retired.
Say it's not so, Judge. Say it's not so.
And we will be in the capable hands of Elizabeth Garber, our new trial court administrator. You'll be in the hands of a new chief judge in July of 23, because I'm term limited, thank goodness. And it's living proof that time waits for no one. So, for our presentation, this is a presentation to Vincent Long for outstanding support to the Second Judicial Circuit during the COVID pandemic. You are the consummate professional exhibiting calm leadership, sound judgment, unparalleled expertise, and a supportive demeanor at all times.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it very much.
It is
Thank you.
a privilege. And Mr. Rosenzweig, I'm just going to read the patch on yours because the plaque says exactly the same thing. Second Judicial Circuit, I kept the courts open. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to work with both of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Well, Alan and I are not good at accepting awards, but it's only because we don't get much practice. Otherwise, we'd be great. But when the Chief Judge says you're accepting an award, you're accepting an award, Mr. Chairman. So we were reluctantly here, but we do accept this, obviously, on behalf of Leon County staff. In particular, I just want to mention Wanda Hunter, who did a lot of our coordination. Wanda, our IT staff and facility staff who did a lot of the heavy lifting. But we want to thank the judge and Grant and his staff for their not only incredible responsibility that they conducted themselves with during this process, but also the agility and the innovation that they embraced throughout. And we just want to thank you for working with our staff. So thank you. It was a pleasure. And Commissioners, we accept it on your behalf as well. Thank you.
Now, Vince, before you leave, Alan, I want to just say and allow each of the commissioners to do a little crowing. I was crowing about our senior staff this week and talked about how much easier it is for our jobs because we have highly efficient, talented administrative leaders. And for the chief judge, among the things that I've witnessed in his courtroom and other judges in this courtroom, they will give out time. They give out warnings. The judges in this courthouse, they do give out sentences. But I have never seen the chief judge come to give out an award for exceptional service, ever. So, given the unprecedented nature of the court, if I captured the judge saying we would have been lost without their help, those are telling words. They were essential to our getting through. Those are telling words. And when the court sends its chief representative to our chamber, to our government, to say the compelling leadership offered by our team, it means a lot. So if there are others on dais who would like to comment, starting with Commissioner Minor, Dozier, Cummings, and of course Commissioner Welch, and then the Vice Chairman, Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Your Honor, thank you very much for recognizing our county administrator and deputy county administrator. I was chairman for part of the time of our pandemic response, and so I feel like I had a really good exposure to what Vince and Alan had been working on, as well as all their staff and their teams on this for a large portion of the pandemic response. And I can tell you, for anyone that might be listening or watching, the prevailing thought, the primary motivation for anything that this county government did was to protect the lives and the safety of the people that lived here. I know that. In a world where politics seems to be swirling around and affecting everything that we do these days, I can assure you that our county administrator, our deputy county administrator, and the teams that we had working on the response were always putting what was important first. So, Mr. County Administrator, Mr. Deputy County Administrator, those awards are very well deserved. We've got a good staff here that is steering this community through, that has steered this community through some very difficult times and has helped this recovery immensely. So thank you very much.
Great. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, look, you sat down. Yes, you two really
couldn't take it.
hate this, but it is very appropriate. Chief Judge Sosham, thank you so much for this recognition. The guys don't get this very often. The county does, but not for their leadership, and we know that it is the entire county family who stepped up, but without good leadership, that would not be possible. So to piggyback on everything else that has been said, I continue to hear from businesses who are so grateful for the grants and the funding, but also individuals who got assistance through the rental assistance program, through Second Harvest, through all of our various nonprofit partners who the county worked with and set up agreements with. And the real impact and the recognition from state and national of how efficient we got that money out the door without any training, without never having been through this before. We should never lose sight of that because it was a huge undertaking. And so, Mr. Chair, I'm going to wrap this up because I know we'll just be building a narrative here. But I had to pull up our last update, number 336 from January of 22. For those who may not know, these started as daily updates, then they were weekly updates, and we got a running total of numbers. For example, our Emergency Operations Center was open for consecutive 682 days. If you think about during a hurricane, that may be open for a few weeks, right? 682 days. There were over 2,000 conference calls with over 27,000 different participants during that time. 1.7 million pieces of personal protective equipment. This is just a snapshot. This is just a little bit of what you all did and managed and all of the county staff. So thank you for that on behalf of a grateful community. And I'll say region, because I think we helped a lot of people in the region as well. So thank you. You'll be out of the hot seat soon.
Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this opportunity to our Chief Judge Sistrom. We certainly appreciate you for recognizing our very able staff. I've coined the phrase, the best county administrator on planet Earth. I got that from my pastor. But I'd like to say the best county administrator and the best assistant county administrator on planet Earth and the best chief judge on planet Earth. But as a newbie to this commission, I've certainly lauded our county administrator. Not only is their phenomenal work unprecedented here in Leon County, but they're recognized, as Commissioner Dozier said, throughout the state, throughout the county. Certainly their concern and sentiment during COVID for the protection of our citizens here in Leon County is appreciated, not just by the commission, by the citizens at large. Appreciate Judge Sistrom for recognizing the level of commitment from our county administrators, the professionalism, and the fact that during the last couple of years, county administrator kept us informed every step of the way, and Commissioner Dozier has given us the numbers. So I'll be brief, but thank you very much. We love you. I know the citizens of Leon County love you, and I know that we're in good hands as far as being protected by our county administrator, your staff, Ms. Hunter, Shinkton, everybody that works with our county administrator to make it happen. And you truly make our jobs as commissioners a lot easier. Thank you. Accolades.
Commissioner Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I as well want to thank Vincent Allen and Wanda and Ken and Andy and Matt and all of our staff. And really, the excellence kind of trickles down from the top. And or trickles up from the bottom, however you want to look at it, but it permeates the organization. And as Commissioner Cummings said, we weren't around really for the first part of the response to COVID, but certainly since 2020, the sort of backside of the response we've been able to witness, and the county administrator and his folks do an unquestionably good job. It's admirable, really, and I think Leon County is lucky to have such professional staff who handle things in such a deft way and are just really abundantly capable. And I don't think folks really realize, the county administrator is not just trying to make sure that during an incident like this, we can keep roads looking good and keep people employed, but also, keep the courthouse open and work with the judges and the justice system. So unquestionably good job and a very deserving recognition, Alan and Ben. You are to be applauded, and I certainly appreciate everything that you do for our county and our community, and also for me, and I assume my other colleagues as well, because you make our jobs certainly a little bit easier, and I think you make our community a whole lot better. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think that we have to recognize that it's called the Leon County Courthouse. So I think the first thing we have to do is recognize that the courts have been very good partners to the commission. While they're recognizing us, we should also be recognizing them. So we appreciate you being the partners that you've been. I'm pretty sure if you really wanted to, you could find out a different use for the fifth floor besides us. So I really appreciate that. As far as staff is concerned, we've come to expect a certain level of strategic excellence, whether it be a hurricane, a pandemic, or anything else, that's any kind of catastrophe that may run through Leon County. And they've always met the measure that we put forth and raised the bar. And so eventually you're going to put yourself in a position where you can't quite meet it, but you haven't quite done it yet. So I appreciate how strategic you've been, how you addressed the pandemic, how you worked with the courts to make sure that they were able to do what they need to do, and how the courts work with us. So continue to be strategic as you've been, and to put us in the best possible place to win. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Well, that wraps up our sentiments shared. Judge Shorstrom, such extraordinary comments you've made. It's not bragging when it's true. And I'm just glad that there's the court now on record to convey sentiments which we all hold about our team here at Leon County. Thank you so very much, Judge. We thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Good. This time we move additionally into our program here of a meeting, and we're asking that Ms. Assistant Sheriff Agatha Gilmore would please come with a presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and to all of the commissioners. What an opportunity it is for me today to speak on behalf of Sheriff Walt McNeil, who's not with us today, but certainly express his appreciation of your funding of 2 full-time deputies who will be the liaison for the Big Bend Continuum of Care as they work together to address the issues of homelessness in our area, and especially the unsheltered individuals that have been identified for us during this time. The 2 deputies, we called them the host deputies. They are the Homeless Outreach Street Team, and so for brevity, and they are called the host deputies. And the purpose of the sheriff's initiative with the host deputies is to provide enhanced law enforcement, to provide services and resources, knowledge, and training to those unsheltered individuals. And so we're here today to share with you the kickoff and the launching of that. In preparation for the hosting and for the launching of this, we had 3 planning committees with key stakeholders and also with the other service providers to get an understanding of how we're going to work together to make a difference in our area. And so we wanted to also to learn what are the current efforts that's been going on with this as well. And so those meetings proved to be very valuable to us. They also assisted us in developing a strategic plan for the next 6 months as we prepare to do this work, working together with the collaboration of the other service providers. And so we all understand that homelessness is a very complex issue. And we also understand, too, that we cannot solve it with the law enforcement response. But if we work together and we collaborate together, we certainly can make a difference to reduce the impact of homelessness in our area. And I also want you to know they're here today. They have received very good training from other areas that are dealing with homelessness in their areas, Sarasota, Broward County. They received specialized training to help us establish a measure of success as we put boots on the ground to ensure that we have law enforcement presence. I want to state that again, law enforcement presence with the Big Bend Continuum of Care and other service providers. We will be a force multiplier as we take on this initiative that the sheriff has laid out for our county. We will educate the unsheltered individuals. We will encourage them to take the services. However, if the education and encouraging do not work, the host deputies, they are prepared to look at the circumstances, develop probable cause if needed, and then move forward with criminal enforcement. And so I do want the management team to stand and wave their hand, because those chairs are kind of hard to get out of with these gun belts on. Wave your hands and let them know that we do have an oversight team here that's going to ensure that the implementation of the host deputies work. And the only way it's going to work, commissioners, and that is we collaborate and work together to make it happen. Our launch date, our moving forward date is June 20th. That will be the date that we launch forward. What we will do as we launch forward, we will establish a baseline as we do in the first 6 months. We will collect data as we work with the other service providers, as we collect data. In doing that, we would then come back to you in 6 months to report our actions. Report our actions. We will, if we have to address our goals and objectives, we will do that as well. But for the first 6 months, we will work with the continuum of care, and we will work in collaboration with what they're already doing. And as we collect data with them, we will bring back to you in 6 months what we see and what we have accomplished. Our sheriffs look forward to working with our service providers. Our service providers to share with us in our planning session the complexity of what we're doing and what we're embarking to do together as a team. And so, as I mentioned before, it is a complex issue, but I believe that as we work together, and the sheriff believes this, with this vision together, we will enhance our law enforcement efforts with the boots on the ground as we go forward to deal with those areas, as we call those unsheltered individuals that have been introduced to us by the service providers and made us very well aware of what we're facing as we go out together June 20th. Any questions, sir?
Thank you. Commissioners, what a comprehensive report coming from Sheriff Gilmore. Are there questions that you may have? Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you so much. I really truly appreciate the update, what all of you are doing, and this is one of many initiatives that the Sheriff's Department is focused on, and really so grateful for the opportunities to collaborate. As you said, it's not just this issue or others are not just something that the Sheriff's Department alone can address, right? These partnerships are critical. So this might sound a bit odd, but as I was driving around the other day, I saw a great pickup truck, and it had both a mention of the host, but also the RISE Center. And it just brought to mind that you all are, it looks like you are bringing together some of these incredible initiatives that you put in place in the last few years. And I just wondered if you could speak to that, how other parts of what you're doing in the department, like the RISE Center, might connect with folks if they should find themselves in the detention center. Am I on the right track?
I think you are very much on the right track because one of the things that we do capture in the detention center, we do capture if their address at large, they don't have a residential numerical address, and so we're able to capture a daily report of that. And with that, the RISE Center is also able to connect and share with them the services that are needed. The All-In initiative is embedded in what we do. And so therefore, even within our departments, we cannot work in a silo. So even with the host deputies going forth in June 20, they also will provide training to our uniformed patrol as well. So because 2 deputies can't do it by themselves. And so because they can't do it by themselves, we have to have a unified front with all of our departments within our agency.
Thank you, ma'am. All in was the right catchphrase for everything you all have done in recent years. So I just wanted to give you a moment there because it is the interdependency of all these programs is really critical. So thank you very much. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other commissioners, any questions of Sheriff Gilmore? Sheriff Gilmore, we're so grateful for the presentation today. You've used the word collaborate. The sheriff is always using that word. You've indicated today that we cannot solve homelessness with a law enforcement response. That is an extraordinary phrase. And the research, which you're proposing to do over a 6-month span, is indicative of the humaneness with which under Sheriff McNeil's leadership, he's taking the direction of law enforcement and perhaps single-handedly setting a tone, setting an approach to complex issues which are not inherently criminal. And I am appreciative. Our board is appreciative for cutting-edge research you've already produced and processed. But may I also say to you that you're proposing to do work now on homelessness, and we're so grateful for the big boots that you're going to put on the ground. And we're standing with you, and we're going to be there if needed. So for your leadership, your efforts, thank you, and please convey to Sheriff McNeil how extraordinary we deem his perspectives about the humane approach to people's lives who are going through the go-through. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Very,
Mr.
very
Chair.
good. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Commissioners.
This time, Commissioner Dozier, we recognize you for presentation of proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am very happy to be joined today by Andy Janik and our very own Deontay Gavin. But here today representing for our Pride Month proclamation. And I do want to say that great job for Tallahassee Pride Fest, the organization Saturday night. Had a great event at the Champions Club, correct? But I was also looking back at the website, and normally this proclamation is given at Pride Fest in April. And after 12 incredible years of the festival, if I have that right, 2 years off with COVID, I'm really excited to see that next year, next April, you already have a save the date up for Pride Fest, right? So we will be back at Clayman Plaza presenting the proclamation next year, but I'm really glad that we can do this in chambers today. So, whereas our nation was founded on the principle of equal rights for all people, but the fulfillment of this promise has been long in coming for many Americans. And whereas the month of June was chosen to commemorate the events that took place over 50 years ago at the Stonewall Inn in Manhattan, New York, on June 28, 1969. And it is often viewed as the beginning of the modern lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights movement. Whereas everyone should be able to live without fear of prejudice, discrimination, and violence and hatred based on race, ethnicity, religion, class, gender, identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, age, mental and physical disability, and to be supported by their peers, educators, and community leaders. Someday, I hope that just reads, live without fear of prejudice and discrimination and violence. It's just for all of us, right? Whereas the month of June has become a nationally recognized moment to celebrate and honor the way LGBTQ plus Americans have overcome adversity and enriched our society. And whereas Leon County celebrates and honors its diversity, its diverse LGBTQ plus community that includes people of all races, ethnicities, religions, and professions. And whereas Leon County strives to be a community where everyone is celebrated for their differences rather than being limited by what divides us. And now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Leon County, Florida, that the month of June 2022 be known as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in recognition and celebration of the many ways in which the history and culture of LGBTQ Americans and the advancements, discoveries, and achievements of LGBTQ plus Americans have contributed to the history, culture, and social fabric of the nation and Leon County. It is signed on the first day of June 2022 and presented on the 14th day. It is signed by all commissioners and the county administrator. And I have to give a special recognition to my county commission aide, Gary Zirin. I'm not sure where you are right now, but he took special care with this proclamation. So he's got the rainbow on there, and you probably saw it when you signed it, a special seal for Pride Month for today. So thank you very much. And gentlemen, if you'd like to say anything, thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners and Commissioner Dozier, to our esteemed County Administrator Vince. Thank you so much. As Commissioner Dozier mentioned, I'm Deontay Gavin, and I work in our Division of Tourism. And I just want to thank the county for this proclamation. I believe it affirms the county's commitment to diversity and inclusion, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Clap. All right, that was good. We're going to take a picture right here.
Sure.
Yeah, you got to do the picture.
We'll get in here.
Thank you.
Sheriff Gilmore, before you, I wanted to make sure that we responded and showed due deference to those officers and those deputies who were with you. And we wanted to make sure that we had extended perfect manners. And we do acknowledge and recognize the team that came with you today. And thank you all for your presence. Thank you very much. We want to recognize in the audience today our supervisor of elections, Mr. Mark Early. Mr. Early, are you, okay, come on up.
Commissioner, thank you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Today I was presenting, I think it's on the consent agenda, the new precinct list, which are the result of the final result of the court challenges to the congressional districts, and also the state and House and County Commission district changes.
Okay.
So that's why I'm here. I'm here if there's any questions. I certainly want to thank everyone for the continuing great partnership between my office and the County Commission and the administrative staff here. Frankly, it's not just the envy of the state, but the envy of the nation. We have a great partnership, and we do wonderful things, I think, for our voters here. And that's, thanks so much to your help in getting that done.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Early. He's here to answer any questions pertaining to district team issues in particular, and if there are broader concerns, he will field those as well. I'm hopeful to see you this week myself, Mr. Early. My fingers are crossed that I will get in there and see you, and we thank you so much, and perhaps there are others.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to seeing you. Yep, our doors are open for qualifying.
Yes, sir. All right. Now, before we go to our consent items, Commissioners, I want to take personal privilege to recognize Ms. Jada Williams. And Jada is here, stop laughing, Jada, is here, this is a serious moment, is in her last coverage of our commission meeting as she will be leaving our community. And we're wishing you well, Jada. We really wish you well, and we thank you for the years of which you have reported what we do, how you report it, and you've been so balanced. I think the word is balanced and fair. So we thank you for that. Good luck. Anybody want to say anything to Jada? All right. Thank you, Jada. We love you so much. You have much success in your future. All right. We ask now for a motion for our consent items. Item number 4 has been pulled. Excuse me, getting ahead of myself. We have citizens to be heard, and Mr. Administrator, who are those citizens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one citizen to be heard on non-agenda items or on consent items. It is on item number 4, which has been pulled from consent. Just as a reminder, that speaker is Max Epstein.
Mr. Epstein?
Hi, all. This is Max Epstein, 1001 San Luis Road, and I'm here to speak in support of the Civil Rights Museum, but primarily for this time, I'd like to speak as the Wakulla Springs Basin Advocacy Group, and I know that Lake Bunson was recently closed due to toxic algal blooms, cyanobacteria blooms, and this is something I've been talking about for the last 3 years, and unfortunately, our stormwater facilities that have been constructed are not considered waters of the state. They do not have any sort of water quality standards. But our group did meet with the Homeowners Association down there. There are about a dozen people. The algal blooms are all in their backyards. They all have respiratory irritation. The Homeowners Association president has 3 dogs that have developed a cough. There's a neighbor that cut a leg, or someone that was helping out around the property, and had to go to the hospital after getting into the water and getting that inside of his body. Unfortunately, the septic to sewer conversion there has also not been progressing as quickly as they hoped. They all have septic tanks that need to be pumped multiple times a year now. Some of them are failing. They've been waiting, some of them since 1994, to get septic in this area. Some of them are going to have to pay $15,000 to replace their septic tanks. So they have requested that the county come and pump their tanks. I think that is a pretty reasonable ask of them. That will help prevent the nutrients from getting into the water. But they have also requested, at my urging, to look at mechanical harvesting of the actual algal blooms. That is the only thing that you can do that will be immediate, that will take out what is creating these toxins. It's basically a boat. They go around, it's got a little paddle wheel, and they actually physically remove the algae. And that you need to do now. I would appreciate, I know you can't talk about it and vote on anything now, but to bring it up later, to investigate mechanical harvesting, and also helping with pumping the septic tanks to help them, because otherwise they're going to be paying thousands of dollars to pump those tanks until they get the septic to them. I just can't tell you how important this is. This is not going to go away. We need to address the nutrients that are coming into this lake, but this is a serious health issue. It's affecting people now, and it will turn into lawsuits eventually. Lake Munson, again, has the benefit of being a water of the state. There are, water testing qualities. People who live next to other stormwater ponds and other things don't. But please consider those 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Epstein, is there another speaker? Okay. Commissioners, let me just say that to the issue of Mr. Epstein, I have been down to Lake Munson, and the issues which he has pointed out is the speed or lack of speed with which our septic to sewer has occurred there, and that's been an ongoing initiative. There is no doubt that the replacement of those Tanks would cost in the neighborhood of $12,000 or upward. The ask coming from the citizens group, didn't y'all meet Sunday? Okay, Sunday. Seeking a mechanical harvesting of the blooms and that the county would consider the pumping of those septic tanks. Now, to the extent that we've not traced, and I know the staff is working to find a sense of what has caused for our county government to place those signs that people not to swim, not to fish, not to recreate, the animals and our people. And I've taken pictures, and Commissioner Matlow and I have gone down there to see what. And I think that this matter is worthy of an agenda item to take, and I'd like Mr. Epstein for something in writing. And please, if what you all are asking, I've taken note of what you've said today. And then I want to just point out to the public that on the east side of Lake Munson, these citizens live, and on the west side of Lake Munson, they live so close to the city's sewer treatment, and yet they are so far away. And for a community that lives that extremely close, but they cannot access Central Sewer. But Central Sewer can come from Commissioner Minor's district, Commissioner Dozier's district, and they come from Commissioner Welch's district, but the people in my district can't have city access to the sewer. It's tragic. It's discriminatory. It's unhealthy, and it may become costly. So a person has received I forgot what that, one of those big medical words, but I think it means infection, being associated with that water. But our government has put the signs out, and the state of Florida is aware. And we have two governments, the state of Florida, the Leon County government, and the 3,000-pound gorilla, the city of Tallahassee, with the exception of Commissioner Matlow, says zero. And people are being infected, and dogs can't go near water. I think that this is time for us to place an agenda item, and I ask your support at this moment. Madam Attorney, do we need a motion or something like that, or what? Do I have a motion to capture what Mr. Epstein has said and ask for the concerns that you all pointed for us to look at that? Is there a motion?
Mr.
Dozier.
I appreciate your sentiment, but I don't think we're in order to take a motion right now. Madam Attorney.
This would be something we would consider under commissioner time later, and then it would require a unanimous vote to, or a majority vote to place it on the agenda. Right.
Okay, Commissioner Dozier.
Mr. Chair, deferring to the county attorney, I appreciate you bringing this up, and I'll add my comments during comment time.
Okay, very
Bring it
good.
back. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Cummings.
No,
Okay.
basically had the same question. It's
Okay.
not appropriate now, but
Okay.
during commission time.
With the guidance of our county's attorney, prepare for a discussion during our time of discussion. Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along. All right, have we completed the citizens?
Completes it, yes.
Very good. Commissioners, is there a motion that we would adopt consent agenda with the exceptions of number 4? Okay, we have a motion for the adoption of our consent agenda with the exception of item number 4. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposes, same sign. It passes unanimously. Number 4.
Number 4, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If you'll allow me a moment for the technology to catch up. This is was pulled by the chairman. It's the item on the Civil Rights Museum proposal. As you recall, commissioners, just by way of a very quick introduction, at your last meeting, you had some documentation distributed to you on this item, and the board directed that we bring this item back to you in form of an agenda item. The agenda item itself spells out the extent to which, and usually the way that we approach items like this is our analysis will provide information with respect to how this proposal aligns with an existing board-approved program or funding mechanism. As you all know, we have a lot of them, and to see which one this might marry up to best, that sort of thing. And as you'll see in the item, we talk about the cultural heritage and arts grant program that we have, and we point out how this proposal could be eligible for that grant process. If the museum part of this proposal was a little further along the way, we acknowledge, and I talked to Delatry, Hollinger, and Ms. Perkins yesterday, we acknowledge the very good work of the organization, the work that they've done for many years. I want to acknowledge that here, not just recently, but for many years. But in terms of the museum proposal itself, we've provided analysis to you on how that would align with an existing board-approved funding process. And again, we've identified that process in our cultural heritage and arts program would be one that, with again a little more progress in terms of having displays that have been open to or now ready to be open to the public and that sort of thing, how that would be potentially eligible for that. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, commissioners. Again, that's item 4 pulled by the chairman.
Do we have any speakers for that?
We have 2 speakers on this item. Max Epstein, to be followed by Stanley Sims. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, that is item 11. I'm sorry about that. There are no speakers on this item with the exception of Mr. Epstein.
Mr. Epstein, state your name for the record.
Sure, it's Max Epstein, and well, I'm here in support of this. I think COCA is a great outlet, but you can't exactly have displays in a museum without funding to open displays in a museum. That would help going forward, and that would be an important project to support. I don't know exactly how you find the funding for it. I think that there's a lot more that we can be doing in the county to actually figure out what historic resources we have and go after grants for them. We need an inventory, and there's a lot of civil rights history here that's still left. You go to the north, most of it's already been demolished. We still have a fair amount here. This has nothing to do with the proposal in front of you, but again, I think we need some sort of larger program, perhaps through COCA, because they do culture, arts, and history, that helps with African American history, preserving it, and figuring out how we market it as well, because this is big money. It's tourism. People can't go visit stuff in the north because it's gone. They come here to visit, and that's why I've been such a proponent also of the Lake Hall Schoolhouse, because it will bring people here. It will bring money, not just to help people understand our history and their place in it, but it's a boon for our economy as well. And we need to start looking at our historic resources and environmental resources more as money makers, because that's why people live here. That's why I live here. So I'm in full support of the Civil Rights Museum and figuring out how to make it happen. And thank you.
We got 2 additional speaker cards. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the first, Delatry Hollinger, to be followed by Jacqueline Perkins.
Mr. Hollinger. Please state your name and address for our records.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, and Mr. Administrator. Delatry Hollinger, Wales Street, Tallahassee. I'm honored to stand before you today to present to you a bit of history surrounding the Florida Civil Rights Museum. Specifically, this proposal is one that would support funding the Leon County Division of the Florida Civil Rights Museum, which will have a specific focus on civil rights and educational pioneers who have impacted Leon County. The concept for the museum originated in 2013, and the initial proposal was authored and presented to local government in 2014. This is an institution whose mission is imperative and whose recognition and provision of resources by the county will blaze paths and trails for not only our county, the capital county of Florida, but this is a museum that does not exist anywhere in the state of Florida. And the county has the unique opportunity to be a trendsetter for this state by your approval of this request. There currently exists no repository with a specific focus on our area's civil rights leaders. This would change that. And with our swiftly approaching bicentennial, would make a strong statement for this community. There currently is nowhere that one can go in Leon County to learn about the impactful and transformational impact and accomplishments of Anita Davis, who would become our county's first black female commissioner, but not because she simply ran for the office and won it. She filed a lawsuit against the county in 1983, which brought about single-member districts when the court ruled in her favor in 1986. And so each commissioner elected by district owes that to Commissioner Davis. There currently is nowhere in Leon County that one can go to learn about Justice Joseph W. Hatchett, who was our state's first black Supreme Court justice and also the first to serve on a federal appeals court in the South. There currently is nowhere you can go to learn about Florida's former Attorney General Richard W. Irvin Jr., who was significant in desegregating schools in Florida. We hope that you will give this time and attention and consideration. We appreciate your support in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollinger. Ms. Perkins, if you would come and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jacqueline Perkins, 3437 Blue Jay Drive. Just want to speak briefly. You all have a packet, and we included budgets, an alternative budget, and an original budget. I just want to say that the general purpose of this museum, something that does not exist, is to increase the level of awareness of well-known and unknown civil rights and education pioneers who've made significant contributions to Leon County and to Florida. Make no mistake, we do plan to expand, and we wanted this to be the Florida Civil Rights Museum. So we thought that it would be good to start in our own home county, which is the seat for the capital of the state of Florida. And I'm here to just share a little bit about the original budget, what we could have done with that. I think you all have that. And I wanted to share with you the information that was submitted on the alternative budget, which represents 25% of that total. And I'll just say that we did that in recognition of the county's priorities, recognition of the budget constraints, in recognition of the county commission's pledge to bring all county employees up to at least a minimum of $15 per hour. We know that there's inflation. We know that there's exorbitant costs to provide fuel to your fleet, to provide service to the community. And in our alternate budget, I just put it this way. If you go and fill up your tank, you can go a certain number of miles. If you put a quarter of a tank, you can go a certain number of miles, and it's going to be less miles. What we plan to do in our proposal includes for that alternate budget, or even we could have done 4 times what we proposed to do in the alternative budget. And I'll just share this with you very quickly, that we are proposing now to do 3 exhibits in the main county library over a 6-month period as compared to 12 to 15 in our gallery. The exhibits would run for 2 months. They'd be updated every 2 months. Each exhibit would be advertised heavily, preceded by reception for the public. It would include the family. We want to partner with middle and high schools, university history departments, sociology civic groups, and boys and girls clubs. We would give certificates, and we expect to also generate revenue by assessing fees for those persons who want to access the museum once we get it on the website. I will say, because I'm short on time, again, if we don't do this, then I think that there's no reason why we can't do this. And we'll start with Anita Davis. because there is no repository for information. We have a number of people on our list that we provided to you, and I do want to share with you that Justice Joseph Hatchett's grandson has already put together a wonderful presentation, and he's excited, and he's going to work with us, and I do hope that we'll be able to do that for this commission. So we hope that you will consider our request and understand the importance of this coming up to the bicentennial and the 60th anniversary of the civil rights legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Are there other speakers? Okay. Commissioners, that concludes the speakers that we have sharing with us as we take up item number 4. What is the pleasure of this board? And I would like to hear from each commissioner if possible. Commissioner Minor, would you like to weigh in?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I met with Mr. Hollinger and Ms. Perkins 2 times to talk about the Florida Civil Rights Museum, and I told them then that I support the concept, and I also believe that Leon County, Tallahassee should be the location of the Florida Civil Rights Museum. One thing I recommended to them, and I think this might be the most appropriate course of action for us, is to pursue funding for the Florida Civil Rights Museum to come from our legislative agenda for the 2023 legislative session. I know that Mr. Hollinger and Ms. Perkins have talked about starting it with a Leon County focus, but the overall, if I'm correct, please correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think that the overall long-term goal was to make it statewide. One way that this approach might be a good one is that with a statewide focus of the Civil Rights Museum, with an appropriation, we could then start with that statewide focus right away, once we got the funding, of course. And so what my motion would be to have a legislative priority item for this Florida Civil Rights Museum come to us when we then next discuss our legislative agenda for 2023 for consideration then. I think this is a very worthy idea, a very worthy project, and I think that would probably be the best opportunity for us to get the funding that it needs. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
You say your motion?
My motion is to add the Florida Civil Rights Museum as a legislative priority for the 2023 legislative session.
Okay. There's a motion.
Which would then come to us when we then deal with the legislative session itself.
Is there a second?
I was seconded.
Okay, Commissioner Cummings has seconded. We thank you, Commissioner Minor, for your comments. Commissioner Dozier, you care to weigh in on them? Now that we have a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And Mr. County Administrator, thank you for acknowledging, and I'm sure many of us have had conversations with Mr. Hollinger and Ms. Perkins. This work goes back for many, many years. We're approaching a decade, really, since some of the first proposals came through about the Firestone building and other work that you've done. So thank you for the long effort. As the item said, it is true. We have done a lot of work as a community. A lot of different organizations have in recent years to preserve one part of our history, but we don't, I agree, have a central place for our civil rights history. I also, after our meeting yesterday, started to look around and see which states actually have civil rights museums or major monuments, and I did not see anything significant listed in Florida. All of our surrounding southern states have either a museum or some significant place, and we do not have one. So while I do think ultimately this is a state issue, and this would be the perfect home for this, and perhaps even a national issue, and we did talk about having a facility at some point, although I'm glad we'll start with or continue, I should say, the exhibits and the programming and everything else. I would like to find a way to help support this effort, or multiple ways. I'm going to say that. Ms. County Administrator, you mentioned kind of looking at where this fits within county programming. And you did mention, and we discussed yesterday, the COCA grants. We do have a lot of funding within that program. But we also recognize that COCA funding, if it were to be allocated to one program or another, is not necessarily funding to start to take the next steps with this organization, or even to get to the ultimate goal of having a facility. So Mr. Chair, I could, support the motion on the floor for sure, but I'd like to add an element there. Or two elements. I would be open to a budget discussion about some funding in collaboration with the city, with others, to see if we could help. I don't want to get ahead of our budget process, but I am open to that discussion.
Okay.
But I think more significantly, the funding that currently resides within the CRA, it is tourism development dollars. $1.8 million is remaining from the old Performing Arts Center funding that we have used for the amphitheater. We had a grant process going back to 2017. And for many of you, you probably remember the last time we saw this on our agenda was in January or February of 21. So it's been a little over a year. At that time, the funding was, the CRA decided to continue working with TLH Arts. I have been told recently that they were interested in having our Visit Tallahassee folks administer a new round of grant. I don't think, based on my conversations with the county administrator, that that's going to move forward. But what I would like to say is Performing Arts Center was a big piece of this conversation, and we now have Mike and Judy Sheridan and their partners moving forward with city support at the Northwood Center. And I think it's time, after 5 long years, to take action with this $1.8 million. And it could be used to support a museum at some point. I'm not saying that this project is ready at this moment. They don't have a facility. But we have $1.8 million that should be used for something. And if the CRA is no longer interested in administering a grant process, I believe we should consider reopening that agreement with the CRA. And it is county dollars, they're tourist development dollars, and to put that into a different posture, even if we're still working with the city, but put it into a different posture so this board can have a role in that discussion. Currently, we're just get to decide on whatever the CRA decides. We get to say yes or no. I think we need to be more involved, and that would allow us to reflect on projects like the Civil Rights Museum. So for Commissioner Minor to make the motion, I wonder if, and I could do this as a secondary motion after yours passes, but I would like to have an agenda item come back to us that reflects on the agreement with the CRA and the tourist development dollars and gives us some options for how we might be able to move forward and change that relationship so we can stop waiting after 5 years and get that money out into the community where it belongs.
Very good. Commissioner Minor, are you open, or those council, are those items too independent of and non-germane to one the other that we should do separate motions? I'm okay with doing separate
I'll leave it at
motions.
the discretion of Commissioner Minor if he feels like it's germane, or it could go as a separate one even under commissioner time later.
Mr. Chairman, so long as the county attorney has no issues with whether it's germane, I'm willing to add it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so let's incorporate the comments of Commissioner Dozier, staff, to reflect that as a Minor's motion. Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, then a couple of comments. Commissioner Dozier's comment about CRA funds, can I ask what time period would be involved? Because, well, I know looking at the Kona funding and reading the analysis from staff, I believe this particular entity would have to have been in operation for a year in order to qualify to apply for Kona funding, I believe. But the CRA, I'm not sure, so can I get clarification from Commissioner Dozier on that, or from the county administrator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, you're correct on the COCA funding and the COCA process, that it would require a year's operation, and Ken Morris here can clarify that for me if I need any clarification on it. And with respect to the CRA funding, I think that's what Commissioner Dozier was suggesting, bringing that back to see. I think we would probably have to change the scope of that to accommodate something like this, but I think that would be something that the board would have the opportunity to do once we bring it back.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I apologize, it's COCA and not CONA. As far as the civil rights proposal on the agenda and analysis, I want to thank staff for the analysis, and I appreciate Mr. Hollinger and Ms. Perkins, as well as Mr. Epstein, for their presentations in reference to this initiative. I think it's very important. I think it's very significant that we have such a museum. And I guess what impressed me about it is that it's not proposed as a black museum or white museum. It's designed to recognize civil rights workers, civil rights museum. And of course, we all know that we had proponents of every race. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I also just want to bring to the attention of the commission the budget proposal that was submitted for the museum. There is also a note about an alternative proposal that reduced by 25% of the initial proposal. I don't think that that's inappropriate. I think if we are going to look at such other funding, if we're going to look at prioritizing this for the legislative, as a legislative initiative with our representative, I think it wouldn't be inappropriate to have some type funding in the meantime. So I don't feel that the 25% of the budget proposal is out of line. And I'm not sure, Mr. County Administrator, if this is something we could look at next week when we have our budget, workshop. But I would like to just put that on the table. And I don't know if it would necessarily be a friendly amendment to your motion, Commissioner Minor, but I think bringing it back as an item for the county administrator and his staff to look at is one thing, but I think agreeing to look at it next week as part of our budget workshop would be a totally different issue. So I'm just wondering if there's any sentiment for looking at that 25% reduction that they indicated in their budget, which would, in my opinion, give them some type funding to start the process until we get to either the budget with the legislature as a legislative item, or until we get to CRA as proposed by Commissioner Dozier.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be amenable to having that added also as a friendly amendment, basically bringing this consideration back for our budget workshop on the 21st. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Ms. Vice Chairman, Commissioner Welch, UNQ, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My sentiments are that of Commissioner Cummings. So I think considering an initiative budget, Mr. Chair, I think we got a couple other things that we're about to talk about. Our contingency fund is going to be pretty slim after that. But I think timeline-wise, if I'm correct, Ms. Perkins and Mr. Hollinger, you guys would be willing for us to sit down and have a good budget discussion about this and be able to consider it fully with staff analysis during that. So I would be more in line with supporting the idea of moving this to a budget discussion item and talking about it then. And all the other possibilities like Commissioner Dozier talked about with COCA and legislative priorities and stuff like that. So I think that's the right move.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Welch, you care to weigh in?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. I agree with the Vice Chair and Commissioner Cummings and Commissioner Dozier and Commissioner Minor. I think that whether we're talking about 60,000 or 240,000, I think we can probably figure out a way to thread that needle at some point. I think we all support the needle. We're just trying to figure out how to thread it. I think it's a worthwhile effort. I applaud Mr. Hollinger and Ms. Perkins on their advocacy for it. I think it's important that we do something, whether it's through the legislative budget request process or trying to find those funds through the CRA or as a budget discussion item. So, in short, I will support the motion as it has evolved here in the last few minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Ms. Perkins, Ms. Epstein, Ms. Hollinger, for your sharing. Thank our staff for caressing the thoughts of the proposal shared and offered by Ms. Perkins and brought by Mr. Hollinger. There's no doubt that civil rights in our nation is going backwards. Our need to establish a front which coalesces the history of civil rights is very important because with critical race theory, sanitizing certain elements of history, if ever we've needed such a repository, we need it now. And I believe that the comments offered by Commissioner Dozier, that among former states of the Confederacy, I was in the museum in the Lorraine Motel in April in Memphis, and to go through the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis and to think that nothing similar exists in Florida. I never thought of that until Commissioner Dozier just brought it up. It's amazing. I feel somewhat empty, but when the women of America had decisions over their bodies only a couple months ago, and the women of America after 49 years no longer have the power, the say over their own bodies, and more than half the nation's population has lost the civil rights over their bodies. We're going backwards. When the rights to vote have been diminished by those who are brown and black in our nation, our civil rights is going back. So I'm very pleased to feel the coalescence of thought, and our feelings are in symmetrical alignment. That's very important. As we think also about if there's no resounding success today and you leave with no money pledge, sometimes it's a process. And it looked on March the 7th of 1965, it looked like John Lewis and those citizens who tried to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Was it Selma, Alabama? Is that right? And they looked like they lost that day. But who knew that that date was the seed planted for the 1965 Voting Rights Act? So I believe it's a Chinese proverb that cites that every journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And we're grateful for the step that you've taken in this regard. My hopes that we would also look at the R.A. Gray State Library for partnering potential. That's what they do. I think that's a great place to collaborate as well. Those things being said, you've heard the motion. That motion has been offered by Commissioner Minor. There were augmentations by Commissioner Dozier, and there was an addendum by Commissioner Cummings and staff. You've heard it all. If no other comments, those persons in favor of the motion and its compliments, please say aye. Commissioner Welch, you with us?
Yes, sir.
Great. All right, we have a 6-0. We thank you so much, and you heard our processing this in the future, and as we hope to bring back an affirmative stance for Civil Rights Museum. Thank you so kindly. Mr. Administrator, our next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, your next item, item number 11, is on the Lake Hall Schoolhouse. You will recall at your May 10th meeting, the board directed staff to provide, to bring back additional funding options to purchase all 3 parcels necessary to acquire and access the Lake Hall Schoolhouse. These funding options will be presented next week at your June 21st budget workshop. However, you'll also recall that the parcel located on Thomasville Road, which provides access to the Lake Hall school site, is currently being marketed. And to prevent the owners from continuing to market this property for sale, as requested by the board, this item seeks your consideration of an agreement with the property owners that would preserve the county's ability to purchase the property during the next 12 months. Of course, that would be contingent upon the board's approval of funding at your budget workshop on the 21st to acquire the 3 parcels and to be ratified at your July meeting. Commissioners, as discussed in several previous agenda items, the acquisition and restoration of the Lake Hall Schoolhouse is a very involved process. Based upon previous board direction, the county has conducted several extensive reviews and presented agenda items to the board evaluating those options to preserve the schoolhouse. In addition, if the schoolhouse is acquired, there is still, again, and I say this each time, a total up to $3.3 million in project costs necessary to restore the house and make the site accessible. Of course, just the purchase alone, and you'll see this at your budget workshop next Tuesday, is around $900,000. The Friends of the Lake Hall Schoolhouse have committed to seeking grant funding to offset those costs, of course, and you've heard that from them. And again, we'd be happy to provide any additional information or answer any questions that the board may have. This item does seek your direction, and I should note, Commissioners, that you have 3 speaker cards on this item. Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners, we welcome those speakers to come now and to offer their comments. And who are those speakers?
The first speaker, Max Epstein.
Mr. Epstein, state your name and address for our records.
All right, Max Epstein, 1001 San Luis Road. I'm glad that we've gotten to this point here, and I encourage you to execute the lease agreement even without next week's budget meeting. That would give us a year to figure this project out. And, you know, there seems like there may even be a private sector solution. I know Dustin's here, and there may be ways to work with the private sector to basically do what we talked about last time, which is section off the house from the schoolhouse and sell it and get some money back. It's important. If you let this go now, this piece of property on Thomasville is the key. If you let it go and you don't execute this agreement, the dream of restoring this house, the schoolhouse, is over. At least for the next 10 years or however long they want to live there. So really, that's the phase 1. So please, I ask you to execute the agreement. Don't make it contingent on the funding, which I hope you can come up with. And just to tell you, as a citizen who's come here time after time, and thank you for bringing this item back. I believe it was 2 sessions ago that your motion was to bring back how to buy the Thomasville piece alone and the different options. And I know, Rick, you asked about mortgaging and how we can put smaller amounts down. It seemed like when we were here last time that you had to raid $885,000 cash up front to make this deal happen. And that's just not the case. And we didn't really get an analysis of buying the Thomasville piece alone, which is the first phase. So that is just where some of our frustration comes and the confusion, I think. That's the most important piece. So you've heard me. Please execute the agreement, and that will give us an actual chance to make this happen. Thank you.
The next speaker is Stanley Sims, to be followed by the final speaker, Dr. C.
Thank My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. I had to hurry and get out of here. My son is graduating from the fire academy, and I've got to beat Vince with pictures on Facebook. So I'm just doubly tired of my kid. But let me say this. This project was problematic until Dustin got involved. This project seemed like it had a straight uphill journey until Dustin, and listen, don't look at this button. Look at the facts. We couldn't get on that property. Now we got access to that property. Dustin has cleaned up that property. Dustin has talked to the property owners. Dustin has talked to all of the players. And the man has 4 options, all less than $1 million. Now that ain't party. That's just a planning. And my spirit kind of troubled because this man has worked tremendously hard on this project. And I just want to make sure we keep the record straight. When a man does something, he should get credit for it. School teacher, Sunday school teacher, the Bible says a man is worthy of his hire. This man has put his own resources in it. He has 4 different, and if we don't acknowledge that, that bothers me. We all in this together. Dr. C has worked on this a tremendous long time, but it came to a standstill. All I do is just push people, because I have an act to just say things other people think, to get things moving. This is important. This ain't about grandstanding. This is heritage. And it's on some prime property. Prime property. But he didn't stop. And I ain't easy to work with, but he took out of his time to make this happen. Don't sideswipe a man. Give him his honest due.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Dr. C, please state your name and address for our records.
Dr. C, 2014 Chulinini, Indian Head Acres. So we've come kind of full circle. And I think we're at a place where there's a door opening with a possibility. The plan that you have laid out, the owners of the Thomasville Road property are willing. And I think it's a doable plan. During the past 5 or 6 years I've been working on this, I keep throwing people in there who might be able to make a connection with the owners, might be able to help them understand the role that they play, and to try to bring them into the agreement. And Dustin offered to speak to these folks, and they are willing to listen to him. They let him have access to the property so it could get cleaned up, something they would not allow the county to do. And so what's happening now is that there's a groundswell of not just government people, but the private sector. And that can make a perfect formula for success. I wanted you all to know as well that I keep telling you about the grants that are available. And I wanted you to know that the grant that I applied for Frenchtown Youth Orchestra, was funded by the African American Culture and Historic folks out of, it's a federal grant, $500,000. If I had owned, or you owned the property at Lake Hall, we could have gotten you the same thing. So I didn't want you to think that this is a fruitless activity that's going to be thrown to the side. Everybody here is a player. and everybody brings their gift to the table. So I'm looking forward to what happens on the 21st, and what with the Thomasville Road people being amenable to your proposal of the 20K to have that option. I think it looks very promising that this time next year we will have begun some restoration. And I want to thank you for your efforts. I want to thank, there he is, Andy. Again, you know, I talk to him on a regular basis, and he's been very gracious, very helpful. All of you have been to the site. I thank you for that as well, because once you see it, you begin to understand the importance. If you had any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, I want to pass the gavel to the Vice Chairman in that I might step down from the role of Chair in order to make a motion to our board, if I can be recognized and make opening comments.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, this has been a long time reviewed. I think that Mr. Epstein, if I have captured his comments correctly, his thanks to us for bringing this item back time after time. And I think that those words are really reveal how much we've put into it, our staff. I want to make the motion of option 3, which is that we do not approve this real estate option agreement to purchase the property located at 4464 Thomasville Road. Instead, that we recommend it to a more appropriate jurisdiction, and that we would recommend to the Leon County School Board, our school district, this golden opportunity, this option that they may have consistent with our findings. They may find other things, but that inasmuch as this property historically evolves from the school district of Leon County, I would like for us to package our findings, to give them that opportunity to make a commitment to the historicity of everything that has been brought before us. And that would be my motion, that we decline approval and to recommend and forward this to the Leon County School Board instead for their consideration.
There's a motion on the floor by the chair. Is there a second to the motion? Motion dies for lack of a second. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, having really, I want to use Commissioner Dozier's word, we may miss that word one day, taking a deep dive into this matter. It occurs to me that I know the great Northeast is very expensive. I know that its value of properties is very high. But as I looked at and did the mathematics on the cost, this school building would cost $3,300 per square foot to restore, and $3,300 per square foot at 1,000 square feet. Our staff has said that it's somewhere at 1,200 square feet, so somewhere between 1,200 and 1,000 square feet. And even at 1,200 square feet, we're asking citizens to pay $2,750 per square foot. And that does not involve any analysis of what we might find as a complication or difficulty. And oftentimes when you're restoring old properties, there's something that your eyes just don't see or contemplate. So the potential that this matter would decrease is small. The potential that the cost could exponentially increase is a high probability. And therefore, as a commissioner, utilizing the monies of our public, I can't pay $3,000 a square foot for restoring this building. Now, at the expense and potential of being called a racist, because I recognize, and perhaps maybe we use the Commissioner Cummings, the but-for test, and but for the race component, we may not have been as careful about this matter. But it is because Dr. C and others have said this is the oldest race school for blacks. And I get that point too. And we've been very tender. Mr. Epstein said time and time again, we have looked at it. But it's very important for the public to know that, number one, unless walk with me, General Counsel, that the county commission has no statutory role or obligation to restore old schools, do we? Is that an obligation of county commissioners of Florida?
What about state?
There is no statutory obligation, no.
Okay. And also,
Come on, y'all.
and also, we have no statutory duty. Secondly, our staff has not found any role or a nexus between Leon County's government and this property. This is not a property that has fallen off the wagon of care and fallen something that negligence of our part. But this has fallen from the Leon County School District, and it was a school under their care, under their auspices, and for whatever the reasons, it ought to be reconciled between the school district and why they have allowed this facility to fall in a state of disrepair, to the extent that it would take $3,000 a square foot to restore it. Those are the facts of which our staff has assembled. They've looked at it, and I'm also aware that next week, as we prepare and we're on the precipice of our budget considerations for next year, there are things that we have not budgeted for, this being among those. And there are things of which we're hopeful that we can budget. And if those things are nudged out or edged out by 3.3 million, if these numbers are accurate, and I trust they are, then there are considerations for the living. There are considerations for the forward-goingness of our county that cannot be accommodated. Colonel Barnes, I see you. I missed you the other day at the laying down of the flags for the veterans. And we care about those who are in the cemetery and what they've done as sacrifices. Who said that? What you said, Colonel? Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. As we go through this conversation, I know we all are emotional and want what we want, and we're pretty passionate about what we believe in. But if I'm not mistaken, I think when speakers were up there, commissioners listened intently and didn't speak back. I ask that you give the commissioners the same respect. I appreciate it. Any other speakers? Commissioner Cummings, Commissioner Dozier? Commissioner Cummings?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate the speakers that have spoken in support of this particular initiative. And I also appreciate Chairperson Proctor's mention of some items that I'd like to piggyback on. In our last board meeting, he raised the point that some years ago, this property was owned by the Leon County School Board. We don't have the benefit of knowing what has occurred between then and now, but it's not owned by the school board anymore. And what I would like to explore is whether or not the school board and perhaps even the city of Tallahassee would be interested in partnering on this particular project. Now, I don't know if the school board has been approached, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the city has been approached. I don't even know whose responsibility it would be to approach them. I recognize the enormity of this situation. I recognize that we have to be good stewards of taxpayers' money, and I think it would lessen the financial burden if we had partners in the process, because I believe that it's important that we preserve history. I think it has been indicated between 1863, 1864, and 1963-64, there were some, 50 or 60 one-room schoolhouses that were built to educate African Americans in Leon County. I think fewer than 10 probably has been preserved. And I believe, based on what I've been told in my reading of the history of the Lake Hall School, is one of the first that was built for African American children to be educated. So I would like to see it preserved. I recognize that we are one leg of government, Leon County, but I think that if this could come to fruition, it would benefit all the citizens of Tallahassee, all the citizens of Leon County. It would certainly be a place where our school children could take tours, go to, learn history. I believe it would be an attraction, not just for state individuals in the state, but it could be a national attraction as well. So, having said that, Mr. Chair, Mr. County Administrator, I'm just wondering if anybody on the board, if we as a board are interested in reaching out to the other governmental entities in Leon County School Board and the City Commission to see if they would buy in a partnership to try to see if we could restore the school, purchase the necessary property, and move together in a partnership.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cummings. I think Commissioner Proctor was moving along the right line with the reaching out to the school board to see if they have any willingness to get involved in this conversation. And I was tempted to go there, but I think the thing that stopped me there is I think that piece of property on Thomasville Road is imperative to this all working out for us. And so I think the piece that lease piece there that holds this in place for a year while we figure some more things out is pretty important. So to put that lease in place, to hold this thing in place for us, to give us a possibility, but then reach out to the school board to see their willingness. And I think there should be some there, in my opinion. I'm not trying to press it upon them, but there should be some willingness for them to get involved. At least we can hold it with that 20,000, see what's there, and then have a conversation about how we can move forward from there. Because if there is no willingness there, we got to pocket the whole thing. I think we got to have a serious conversation about what that means to us. Commissioner Cummings, Commissioner Pratt, you want to?
Not defer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And I would, at this point, Mr. Vice Chair, like to make a motion to that effect, incorporating the recommendation that we spend the $20,000 to secure. Well, I think this is subject to the budget workshop next week, isn't it? It's subject to the budget workshop next week. Okay.
So I believe, Mr. Administrator, staff recommendation with the caveat that we would actually, what's that recommendation? With the caveat that we would actually reach out to the school board to see their willingness in getting involved in the conversation.
And the City Commission as well.
In the city.
Yes, I think what you're saying, just to make sure we've got it clarified, if it would be option one plus.
Yes.
To reach out to the school board and to the city to see if they would be willing to participate. We would certainly do that if that's the direction of the board.
Absolutely, that would be my motion.
Is there a second to the motion on the floor?
1 and 2.
Second by Commissioner Minor.
I'm sorry, you're right, 1 and 2. That would be 1 and 2 to approve the budget amendment as well, just a budget action that would be required as well.
All right. So motion on the floor is options 1 and 2 with the amendment that we will reach out to the city and school board to see their willingness to get involved. That motion has been made by Commissioner Cummings, seconded by Commissioner Minor. Commissioner
Mr. Chairman, real quick on point though, option 2 actually couples the option fee for $20,000 with the board approving the purchase of all 3 properties. That's not the matter of this motion here. The motion here is really for the $20,000 option fee with no obligation whatsoever at this point to purchase any one of the 3 properties, but then also contact our school board, city, et cetera.
There would, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, to answer Commissioner Meyer's question, this would not obligate you to do anything. It would just be, should the board approve at your budget hearing to pursue the purchase, we would preserve our ability to execute. You would already have given me the direction to execute this option agreement.
Okay, that sounds good. Just wanted to clarify that because my initial reading of option 2 seemed to say that you approved the option fee for $20,000. You're also approving the purchase of the 3 properties, which is not the case here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm going to confirm that with my wordsmith, my county attorney. Just for the record, as it's been explained by the county administrator, is the way you understand it too, Madam Attorney?
The intent of the board has been made very clear.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I have Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Proctor, you want to cue? So Commissioner Dozier, we're going to finish up Commissioner Proctor, and then Welch will vote. Sir?
Welch is on the phone.
Oh, Commissioner Welch, would you like to make comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to Commissioner Dozier, Commissioner Welch, now I'm finish up with Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Dozier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want some clarity on the options first before I make a couple of comments. Madam County Attorney, I think this is for you, but it could be for the county administrator. We all talked about this a good bit in briefing. Option 2, if the board includes funding for the purchase of all 3 properties, that would be in the FY23 budget. Therefore, the option agreement would still be required because we have some lag time over the summer before that budget goes into effect. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood, if we're moving forward on purchasing, why we still need the option, because, and that money would be applied to that purchase price should we move forward. Okay.
It's just for a little bit more clarification. It's just that the option dollars would be coming from current year.
Yes, sir.
The general fund contingency.
Thank you. All right. Well, just wanted to clarify that, Mr. Vice Chair, but I'm going to circle back to the chairman's comments when you said that you wanted to bring out a comment I make, doing a deep dive. The first thought I had was your phrase of walk with me, and then you used it a few seconds later. So I appreciate that. We've been up here a long time. So frankly, I'm kind of hard pressed to remember an item like this that has been through, I believe now, 5 different general business items. We may do that with budget items and other things like that, but this is a long process, and I think it does speak to the desire by the full board to get creative, to really dig in and see what options are available to us. But I have to say, particularly for Chairman Proctor, you echoed a lot of the concerns I have had over time about the complicated nature of this property. And I've said it before, and I will probably at the last 4 agenda items, and I will say it again, we should never have been in this position in the first place. We need to be, and I think we are now, proactive in identifying our cultural and heritage resources prior to development. I've said it before, this board has taken action to even enhance resources for that by adding a position, and I still hope the city will walk with us at some point to hire that position, because I think that type of, I'm going to make up a title, this is not what it would be, but cultural resources, director or someone like that could help groups like this when we do identify something or in looking for funding, in addition to the review of new developments. So this is something that really, it is challenging to see going in a different direction. However, we have to be good stewards of the limited funding that we are provided by citizens of Leon County. And Mr. Chair, when you read off the price per square foot, that is a startling number. Now, I can hear other people, not those talking right now, but immediately I thought, how could we put a price on our history? And I know you believe the same. I mean, it is hard to set that price, and yet that's the tension that we've got, right? We've got to put our dollars limited dollars in places that will benefit the whole community. We want to do so much more always than we have the capacity to do. That's the fact of life here. I also want to say I think this is an interesting day, given that we just discussed the Civil Rights Museum and the potential there. It is hard to compare. These are both part of a whole effort to recognize our entire history. But if I look at the cost, and if we move forward with just this one parcel of land, 400,000 plus, or more than 400,000, that does not mean that we aren't going to have to spend the money, obviously, to get the other two parcels. And even if we had the city and the school board working with us, which I'll get back to in a second, just to conclude my thoughts here, I cannot support exercising that option today. We asked for additional information to come back in the budget item that looked at what type of investment might be required in the property should it become public. Should Leon County take this property? Do we need to add security? Do we need to add a lot of different things right off the bat while we are looking for other grant funding? What is the county's role in making sure what would be then public property is successful and meets our requirement to open that up? And I think the Friends have demonstrated, and congratulations on the grant, Dr. C. That's fantastic. I think there is other funding available, but I can't agree to the option at this point without seeing that additional information that comes into the budget at the very least. And I am concerned about our budget as a whole and how much we may need to spend on this one project when we have many other needs and many other things we want to do, for example, Civil Rights Museum or other things. So I could support a motion just to take the next step and bring it back next week, but I cannot commit at this point to doing anything else. And final thought, I love your ideas, Commissioner Cummings and the Chair, about reaching out to the school board and to the city. Can't really speak for the city. They've got their own budget challenges, and one would think that they might be able to find the money. But for the schools, I would be hard pressed to think that they would have the funding to focus on something like this right now, given all of the other challenges they have. I just had a discussion earlier today about the whole Old Sale High School property. That's a complicated issue. I know you're very, very familiar with it, right in your backyard, right? But it's been sitting there for many, many years, and the school has not invested in it, and I think they're now ready to perhaps sell it. I'm hopeful that will be something that the community can really use. But I think reaching out to them is good, but I'm going to be very surprised if the schools have funding to contribute to this, and we may be right back here looking at the full cost on the county's budget list for discussion next week. So that was a number of different comments, Mr. Vice Chair, but basically I can't do anything today other than the limited approval for getting it into our discussion next week to see that additional funding, perhaps reach out to the schools in the city, but I can't commit to anything next week. I've got to see this in the context of our full budget.
Thank you. Commissioner Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Commissioner Dozier's comments and agree in principle. There's some unknowns, obviously, but I can support the motion in an effort to get us to next Tuesday and kind of flesh it out a little bit in the budget discussion, in the context of the budget workshop. So I'll support the motion as it is. I appreciate Commissioner Proctor's efforts to rope in other responsible organizations. And I can also appreciate the Vice Chair's sentiment that, as you all know, and I've stated several times, that property on Thomasville Road is crucial to any future access and success to the schoolhouse. And so I'll support the motion as it is, as it moves us closer to a resolution, but I will welcome a full fleshing out of the details next Tuesday. Thank you.
Commissioner Broughton. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. County Attorney, I'd like to, for you to give our board next week a full understanding of the chain of title of this property. I think that's important with respect to the jurisdiction which this property has been in previous years. It's befuddling to me how this opportunity has been presented to Leon County to acquire. And it's an opportunity that can be shared and that we're willing to share the splendor of this history as collaborators and partners with the school board or the city's government. Certainly the eminence of education for slaves, former slaves in this area, would illumine and shine positively, in particular on the school board, if they were partners with us. I like also, secondly, to understand legally, share with our board the obligation that we have to receive the citizen proposal, and that somehow we're to, that we have to grapple with it, which I think that we have. But is there any mandate from the citizen proposal that we're obligated to accede to and to place in our budgetary process in particular? The third component that I am wanting to get a detailed understanding at the restoration of this, if we endeavor to go this route, what is the per square foot value in all of those things? And given that we've done no preliminary analysis of whether or not bodies are buried in the schoolyard, it's a whole lot of people in that part of our community where unmarked graves. I like to make sure that those matters are detailed. And other incidentals that come up when you're dealing with old historic restoration type things, those concerns are there. You know, this could be a value-added component as a cultural element for our community. It may add a lot of value as a cultural component. But I think that we need to see the value of which this project brings to us and its added valueness, that is not cast upon us as some kind of a guilt trip for what a school board or someone has abandoned. I don't want to acquire, and I don't feel morally or historically, and I want to make clear that as I think of Black history, I think the Proctor family is Black history, period. So I don't have to go look in a book. I've evolved from it, and as we all have historically. There's no need to, for Dr. C or the group of citizens to come and tell us what we ought to ordain as sacred. I know what's sacred to me. My family is, the blood in my veins, as is in yours. So we don't want to be guilt-tripped into something. I'm not going to be. And at this point, for what the months that we have allowed the tail to wag the dog, I still can't get out of $3,000 per square foot. And that's with the unknown, non-professional analysis of the dirt or anything. That's amazing. And so it's my hope, Commissioner Dozier, that what you're saying is that you're not committing to an open checkbook. And I hope that I'm hearing you, commissioners, say that we're not going to this project next week with an open checkbook and unlimited in what we would do for this one project. I heard Mr. Epstein say in our meeting tonight that there were people who were waiting for septic to sewer. He's asking for the county to pump living people's sewer down in Lake Munson, which I agree. I will talk about that later during our commission time, but for $3.3 million, that right there would help a hell of a lot of people who are living alive and the dog can't get in the water. He's asked if we can do a mechanical harvesting of blooms. People hospitalized from a lake that we have put a sign up saying it's toxic. There are people who live inside of Capitol Circle, who live very close to the city's sewer treatment, but they can neither vote nor do they have sewer treatment. There's a lot we can do with 3.3. Ms. Gilmore, Sheriff Gilmore, came and said that they're working on a homelessness effort and research with homelessness. There's a lot we can do with $3.3 million for history. And I see the living advantages of investing those kinds of dollars. And if for $3.3 million, we could even get a bathroom that's not an outdoor toilet at the fairground. Just a lot that would benefit living people right now. So I'm impressed by the history, as we all are. For the record, my mother actually attended a Northeast little elementary school called the Shepherds Elementary. I doubt if there's history or records or anything like that, county attorney. But you may see something called Shepherds Elementary. It's on the Phipps Plantation. It's the plantation she grew up on. It's the plantation her mama grew up on. It's the plantation my great-grand. So we know about plantation life, schools, churches, graveyards out there. But $3.3 million when people need septic tanks cleaned out that the county ought to step up and be responsible for, I hope that we can take $3.3 million and help people, that we do have a commitment and an expectation to provide for the health, the safety, and the welfare of people within the governance and governing framework that are expected roles of county government. I'm happy, and thank you, Commissioner Cummings, for fleshing out and giving invitation to the city and the school board to come and have some of this dessert. We don't want to be greedy. We want them to have some in name and in responsibility. That's great. But will we know these things before June 21, our budget workshop? And if we are not in receipt of not knowing when they're going to meet again, but if we're not in receipt of a response of whether or not the city and the school board want some of this dessert, are we suggesting that we're going to move along and go forward on a $3 million project while Mr. Epstein and others around Lake Munson and inside of Capitol Circle don't have adequate health, safety, and issues with which county government is down there, got a sign up telling folks they're the only people in the county who the county has said don't swim, don't eat the fish, keep your pets away, know the body of water. That's negligence. And we've let that body of water, it's not a schoolhouse, it's a body of water that then fell off the wagon. And we have done nothing. Chairman, Vice Chairman, I appreciate your handling this issue, facilitating the issue. But I wanted to put forth a motion tonight to the best of my thoughts. And I've noted here that our Leon County Administration, our County Attorney's Office, the Real Estate Division, have all been in contact with the real estate agent for the owners of 4664. Y'all, that's a whole lot of staff time. That's a whole lot more commitment of their time to this project, which is not really within our wheelhouse. And we should not be guilt-tripped into doing this alone without the aid and support of other entities which may more directly be responsible for the demise as well as the disrepair of this piece of property. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Motion on the floor made by Commissioner Cummings, seconded by Commissioner Minor, was for options 1 and 2 as amended by Commissioner Cummings to include reaching out to the school board as well as City of Tallahassee. All those in favor of the motion on the floor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1. Item number 12, Mr. Administrator. Chair.
All right, Mr. Administrator, item number 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, this item is on the, item number 12, on the Commission of Status of Women and Girls. It was requested by the board at your March 8th meeting, and we've provided the proposal here for increased funding of $48,750 to support additional staffing and programming. At your March 8th meeting, the board approved support, as you will recall, for the establishment of the Council of the Status of Men and Boys. As you know, the Council of the Status of Men and Boys is charged with identifying and providing direct support to men and boys at great risk or at greatest risk of becoming a victim or a perpetrator of violence in Leon County. At this same time, the board also considered annual funding for the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. At this time, the executive director at Oasis Center, the agency that staffs the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, noted the disparity in funding between the two entities and requested the board consider increased funding. Commissioners, while the two entities have similar names, as you know, they have different missions. The Council on Women and Girls is providing policy recommendations and promoting awareness related to the issues affecting women and girls in the community, which differs from the Council of Men and Boys. That will provide individual assessments and coordinate the provision of direct services and lead evidence-based prevention and intervention efforts, as described in the item before you. As requested, the Oasis Center has provided for an increased funding request, again for $48,750 to support increased staffing, expanded research, the development of digital resources, in additional programming and engagement. A like amount has been requested of the City of Tallahassee. Commissioners, we are seeking your direction on this item. Happy to answer any questions you might have. And I should note, we also have 4 speaker cards on this item.
Very good. Commissioners, you all desire to hear from the speakers. You want to, okay, very good. Our speakers.
First speaker, Kelly Oddie.
Ms. Oddie, please state your name and address for our records.
Kelly Oddie at 1075 Alameda Drive. Is that as loud as it sounds like in my ears? Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Mr. County Administrator, thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and talk to you about this proposal. The Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, 11 years ago, the County Commission took the leadership role in this community and helped me create the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. I applauded you then for taking a leadership role, have really been incredibly thankful and grateful for the role that you've taken in the last 11 years to continue to support the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. And I applaud you now for taking leadership in this regard to take the Commission to the next level, which is really what the community needs. The proposal that's in front of you was worked on by former commissioners, former CSWG commissioners, current CSWG commissioners, and then also the members of the boards. That's of the Oasis board. That's over 100 people that weighed in on this proposal. The proposal that we put together was really consensus-based, that in order for us to make real change and equity for women and girls in the community, the CSWG needed an opportunity to have a leadership staff member that could create and sustain an agenda for that CSWG and the commissioners. The really important things about this proposal that I want to point out to you are, one, it makes us and the CSWG accountable to you by providing really strong metrics and data on how the quality of life for women and girls is improving in the community. We'll actually be able, when we're done, to be able to measure how well women are doing across the community in several different indicators. And I think that that's incredibly exciting. It also expands the Commission's role in the sense that it will be organizing and convening women-serving organizations to come together and learn about the most recent research that's affecting women and girls, and also trying to pull them together to work on things collectively. While it's not a direct service organization, it does take a leadership role in encouraging other direct services and also moving services where they need to be in order to meet the current needs of women and girls in our community. And I think that's really important. Another point that I wanted to just reiterate is that we are a committee of both the city and the county commissions. We're not, the CSWG is not an independent body. It cannot get any other funding other than from the two commissions. And so I'd really appreciate your support on this item. Thank you very much.
The next speaker, Mary Deschler.
Please state your name and address for our records.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Deschler, and I live in 1339 Hancock Street. And I'm coming to ask you to support the CSWG 2.0 proposal. I'm speaking from the perspective as the current CSWG program coordinator. And currently I work part-time for the CSWG. And while I thoroughly enjoy my work, so much more could be done with a full-time leadership position. Currently, we have received feedback from both you and the City of Tallahassee, and all of the feedback that you'd like us to improve upon can simply not be done with just me and the 21 volunteers that serve on the CSWG. So while that may include creating the database, sustaining relationships, and having a more sustainable community impact, like I said, none of it can happen with the current part-time position. Additionally, the part-time position is highly attractive to college students and graduate students who have held this position before me. But with a full-time position, this is going to enable people outside of that age bracket to hold the position, thus sustaining the relationships far longer than a graduate student would be able to hold it. So I am cognizant of the fact that a lot of people have presented different budgets and asked for you today for furthering their money efforts. But like Kelly Oddie just mentioned, we only can ask you in the city. So I'd really like you to keep that in mind today and possibly next week at your budget workshop, that we really need your support in this effort because we only have 2 support systems. So once again, thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deschler. Our next speaker.
Next speaker, Andrea Jones.
Please state your name and address for our records.
Hello, my name is Andrea Jones, and I'm at 705 Bivens Avenue. And I appreciate coming after Kelly and Dressner because they summed it up pretty well. But I'm going to give you my perspective. But I also want to thank you for your work. Like Kelly said, you were ahead of the curve for this. A lot of communities don't have this resource. And I appreciate the work that y'all have done. I appreciate the conversations and the time that you people have put in for the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. I'm a former commissioner for 2 terms. I was on the report writing committee my first term. The second committee, I was on, second term, I was on the safety. And what I found was that there was a lack of data on women and girls. And that's really important. Data doesn't necessarily tell you what to do, but it tells you how you're doing it and how it's playing out. And an indication, a pointer, is very good to have to go forward. My perspective also is that because I still hold it dear in my heart, because the commission is in the sunshine, it takes more resource to support our efforts. Our work is volunteer, but the work of the people that support us is not. And we were clearly aware of that time, that part-time resource that we had to put things together that we couldn't do together because of the sunshine. So funding for that alone is important. I also want to give a perspective as a past commissioner. I've talked with past commissioners to try and help support this mission that we really think is vital for this community, for women and girls. And it's really difficult to do that because, again, we will tap into that same resource that we were trying to tap into as commissioners that's very limited. So I just want to say I support the increase in funding, and I appreciate this time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Our last speaker.
Final speaker on this item, Carrie Boyd.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor, Chair Proctor. My name is Carrie Boyd. I am at 301 South Monroe, Suite 108 here in Tallahassee, 32301. It's really good to see you all again today. I've spoken with you all many times over the years, but today it's a real special honor to stand up here as chair of the CSWG for the 2021-2022 term. And Andrea kind of stole my thunder wherever she went, because I wanted to not repeat what other people had said, but really focus on the fact that we are an advisory board to you all, and we do operate under the sunshine. And I am privileged to serve on many boards in this community, but this one is really unique, not only because it focuses solely on women and girls, but because we do operate under the sunshine. And I have served on this body since 2019. I served first as the chair of the Violence and Safety Committee, and now I'm chair of the whole commission. And while we respect the Sunshine Law and obviously operate under its purviews, it does make this work much more challenging. And we do need the full-time leadership an executive director can provide. We do need that full-time executive to really serve as the boots on the ground. And we have consistently provided you all with data for the past 11 years, some really robust policy recommendations, and implementation now is something we can really also work with you on by taking the CSWG to the next level. And finally today, again, I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but I do realize that it is a privilege to be up here before you all this evening. And I'm not asking this for me. I am asking this on behalf of the women and girls in our community who cannot be here this evening, who have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. Black women in particular, LGBTQ plus women and girls, women with disabilities, women and girls experiencing poverty. And we're really making this request on behalf of all women in the community so that we can provide you with even better data and policy recommendations moving forward. And we just, again, thank you so much for your support over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. We thank Ms. Oddie, Ms. Ashworth, Ms. Jones, and Ms. Boyd for your input. Commissioner Minor, Commissioner Welch, I need you all to chill a little bit, and I don't even mind if you all think me I think the word is sexist, but I really want foremost to hear from Commissioner Cummings and Dozier, and I want us fellows to just chill for a little minute. And I can be persuaded today, but I'd love to hear first. We have a black woman on this board, and we have a white woman on this board. That's diversity. And I think that on an issue like this, with all sincerity, us guys need to wait and hear what they have to say. So Commissioner Cummings, then Commissioner Dozier, then we'll open up Commissioner Minor, Commissioner Vice Chairman, and then Commissioner Welch. Commissioner Cummings. I'm a sexist, so that's what I'm...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Of course, being a black woman and being a female, I certainly...
Check the box.
I support this particular initiative. I want to thank staff, and I certainly thank Ms. Oddie and the council and OASIS for all the good information that was given us. It's very interesting. It's very in-depth. And I think we all recognize the contribution that the council and OASIS has done for our community. It's very tremendous. They do the analysis, they do the research, and then they reach out to service providers. It's important that we support our women and girls because there are significant issues that women and girls face in this community. Everything from domestic violence to sex trafficking. They research those, they give us the numbers, and then we reach out to others to assist in those efforts. So I certainly support increase in funding. I think it's tremendous that over the last 11 years, they've been providing this level of services, and this is the first time they've asked for an increase, so I think they should be commended for that good work. So I would make a motion if it's in order to accept increased funding, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a positive motion to support the, was that 1 and 2, or which numbers were those?
Option 1.
Okay, for option 1, coming from Commissioner Cummings, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Cummings, for making the motion, and for all of you for being here today. For Kelly, full circle, right? It's been a lot of work over the years, a lot of changes in the commission, but I'm going to argue, and I think you all agree, not enough. And part of that is because of the limited staff time. So, Mary, it was good to hear your perspective as that part-time help, and obviously our past Commissioner Andrea Jones and current Chair Carrie Boyd. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. I think you all rounded out a lot of the potential with a full-time position, but a lot of the challenges currently. Mr. Chair, you may remember that several years ago, I want to say this was 18 or 19, CSWG did a strategic planning session, and we appointed one person. I served there, and Commissioner Richardson did. And we worked through a lot of the issues. We heard from a lot of the commissioners and the staff about the challenges. And this sounds very similar. If you think about the sunshine issue, every single time a committee wants to meet, we have a part-time staff member who has to go and administer that. And that in itself lends some challenges. But what I am most excited about is the measurements, the data. If we look back at that first report with more than 140 recommendations, it told us two things. One, we didn't have enough information about the status of women and girls in general, but definitely in our community. But secondly, there was a lot of work to be done. So working with the universities, working with other organizations to look at those metrics, to see how we can measure how we are progressing, whether or not things are working, and to have a leadership role with the other organizations. Again, I'm repeating some of the things you've said, of course, but that really stood out to me, and I'm excited about this. I also want to recognize that the county did lead this and provide funding for the first few years, and the city joined us. We have not increased the funding once. So in that 11 years, we've not increased our funding. So I think it's time to do that. The last thing I will say, Mr. Chair, is, and I should direct this actually to the county administrator. I think you all in the agenda item, you're right. There is a very different scope, and I will even say charter, although I don't think that's a formal term I can use here, between the Commission on the Status of Men and Boys and the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. However, neither of these commissions are independent. We're all in this together. So I think that getting some more strategic work by the CSWG will complement what we're doing on Commission on Status of Men and Boys, and it will benefit our entire community. So I think this is also the right time to move forward with this funding. So thank you for the hard work in the last few months of putting this together. And I hope the city walks with us, to use the chairman's phrase, in a few weeks' time. Thank you.
Very good. There was one point of information shared with us that the county and the city is the only source of funding that the CSWG can receive. So, Mr. Ray, is that accurate? Is there something legal that prohibits them receiving monies from anyone other than the city and the county?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So if they hired a grant person, or they could do that and receive monies from someone other than the city and the county?
I think perhaps, and I'm just guessing, that statement might have been in reference to the CHSP process, and because they're not a service provider.
Okay, very good. I know my parents told me I could only receive money from my mom or my daddy, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Could I clarify or ask a follow-up question on that point? I know we're waiting for our gentleman to step in here, and as I just said, you guys are essential to this.
They're patient.
So, yes, 2 votes won't carry it, and I'm sure we'll get more. Mr. County Administrator, I meant to ask a question about that, so Mr. Chair, I'm glad you brought it up. Yes, they're prohibited from going after CHSP dollars. That would still be city and county funding. But we've never contemplated, and I don't believe the CSWG board has contemplated, getting outside funding beyond perhaps sponsorships for certain events. That could be something that with a full-time director they reflect on in the future and through partnerships, right? But with the part-time and with the annual report and everything like that, it just wasn't something that was ever contemplated. Do you think that's a fair statement?
I don't want to speak for him, but I think that sounds about right.
Yeah? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think that the data, in particular, the first report was so powerful. I think money was hanging out there for that report. But I love hearing Ms. Jones indicating that they would be directed to go after additional data. And it's just good to see a former commissioner still coming around the campfire for your meetings. Commissioner Minor, Ms. Vice Chairman, Commissioner Welch, and we'll recess for our break.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank everyone who came to speak on this agenda item. My wife, Jessica, was a former chairwoman of the Commission on Status of Women and Girls, and she currently serves as Vice President of the League of Women Voters of the United States, the national organization. Add that, I've got 2 daughters, so we are constantly in our house talking about the status of women and girls, and how during the pandemic, we all know women who took a step back voluntarily from their careers to care for children when the schools were closed. Should men have done it just as often as women? Yes, but the fact remains more women did it. And many of those women are still trying to regain their footing since they took that step for the betterment, for the good of the family. I looked at this up on the Center for American Progress says that men's employment has fully recovered from to the pre-pandemic level, but women still face a pandemic employment gap. Roughly 1.4 million fewer women in this country are working today than in February 2020. Black women in particular have faced the steepest challenges. In fact, the employment gap for black women is almost twice as severe as it is for women overall in this country. So I think I know where this motion is going. I'm very happy about this. I'm going to enthusiastically support the motion for increased funding. As Commissioner Dozier said, this is very timely. There are women in this county, there are women in this country that are truly struggling, that have not been able to make those gains back to pre-pandemic levels like men have. And we need an organization that is expanded, that helps us take a look at the needs of women in this county and can help us make sure that we're improving their quality of life for themselves and their families. And so for this reason, I'm enthusiastically supporting the motion, and I hope this board will support it overall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Ms. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I support the motion on the floor.
Very good. Commissioner Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with I'll support the motion. As somebody who lives in a house with one woman and 2 girls, I'd have to sleep on the porch if I didn't support such an organization. And I appreciate everything that the CSWG does, and I'm certain that this investment will have a positive return. Thank you.
Very, very good. Those are very good reasons for supporting one woman and 2 girls. And looking at the floor, indeed, of all that we've heard, this has been a great deliberative discussion, sharing. I would like to encourage and allow for CSWG to recognize that I'm somewhat partial toward information and gathering. And I believe that what Commissioner Minor and Dozier have said about the information, because looking back at the original inception of the first agreement, you were to be a policy advisor to this commission with respect to public policy measures that we could be helpful to the women of this community. I encourage you to go back and look at that first report, and maybe if we could do a decade-long or 11 or 12-year look back at where we are since your first report, I would appreciate that. And from that information, who knows where it could take us in a positive stance. Hearing the motion offered by Commissioner Cummings, seconded by Commissioner Dozier, amended by Commissioner Minor, agreed to by Commissioner Maddox, and just flat out, just capitulation on the part of Commissioner Welch and Commissioner Proctor, just seeing all of that momentum, he dives on the wagon. Don't leave me, guys, don't leave me. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. It passes unanimously.
Aye.
All right, we thank you. We're going to take a break here, and we'll be back at 6 o'clock for our other, and we'll finish up the meeting thereafter the public hearings. Thank you.